By this point, you probably have already walked into your local co-op and noticed the chick brooders. It's that time of year again. Today, we have with us John Houston, Director of Business Services for ProTrition Feed, to give a few tips and tricks when you take on your chick projects this year. John, tell us a little bit about your background in chick care.
Well, it's great to be with you and do this video, first of all. And then my background, I've been involved with chicks and chickens all my life. I started with the 4-H chick chain when I was in the 4th grade. Had those all through school. Then when my kids came along, they started with chicks, and we even were involved in show chickens, any breed you want to mention. And then my kids went off to college and left us with 150 hens. So we've been involved in that all our life.
Yeah, I think the chick chain is a great way to get started. For someone that gets started and they go buy those birds from the local co-op, what should they have on hand before they buy the birds?
Well, great question, and let's be sure to understand that these are living, breathing creatures, which will require care. They can't take care of themselves, so they do require care. Just before you bring them home, make sure you have your brooder ready, that you have your heat lamps in place, that you have good bedding, that you have your waterers and feeders ready to go, and so when those chicks come in, they can go right to their new home.
What kind of feed should we feed these new chicks?
Well, obviously, chick starter is what we would term that, and we want to make sure that it's somewhere in that 19 to 20% crude protein. We don't want to get real hung up on protein, especially if those chick starters are formulated with a good amino acid balance. But somewhere in that range, we want to use, and we want to keep that in front of them all the time for that first 20 weeks of life, and then obviously we want to make sure that they're eating that feed and that they're consuming that feed and that they're not having any problems with that. So.
Yeah, awesome. So once we get the birds, we've got our brooder set up, we've got our feed in there, we've got our chicks home. What should we monitor for with those new birds?
Well, there's just a few things, but they're very important. First of all, let's monitor our feeders and waterers and make sure that they're full and that the water's clean and fresh, and let's make sure we monitor that. But as far as the birds are concerned, let's monitor how they act. Are they bunching up? Are they spread out? They'll tell you if they need more heat or if they need less heat. And this time of the year, especially in Tennessee, it's 80 degrees one day, 20 degrees the next. So we want to make sure that that we're watching that, because we can adjust those heat lamps up and down and control the heat. If those chicks bunch up because they're cold, we need to address that, because they will smother each other and death will occur. And it's very common. But if we catch that on the front end, we can avoid that. We want to keep that brooder somewhere at chick height in that first couple of 3 weeks, around 95 degrees. Then we can start backing that up to maintaining about a 75-degree range. If they really spread out, we got it too hot in there.
Sure. So once we have them on chick starter, how long should we leave them on that feed? And then when do we kind of make that transition to a different type of feed?
Really good question. So we got to make sure what our purpose is with these chicks. Are they going to be layers, which 99% of them, that's what we're doing today. But some people are raising meat birds. So those meat birds, and by the way, there's a different starter for those meat birds. It would be a higher crude protein up there and around that 22%. But we want to be sure what our purpose is. But let's talk about the layers. About week 20, we're going to start seeing some eggs, and we want to transition those birds from a chick starter grower over to a layer pellet and or a layer feed. That layer feed can be a crumble or a pellet or a mini pellet, which is a smaller diameter. Don't really get hung up on that personally, the size or the form, but that needs to be around a 16% crude protein product that has a good amino acid balance. And then if you want a little higher protein, that's fine. And as we transition to a layer feed, we want to make sure that we have grit available. That's even important for the chicks as well. And then we have a separate calcium supplement out there available for them as well, because these layers are really using calcium, and they only absorb calcium at a rate of about 50% of what they're being fed. So we keep a calcium supplement, even though the feedstuffs are very well fortified with calcium. They are using it at a rapid rate. So
Sure. So what about treats for my chickens? Is that safe at that age?
treats are safe. But remember that they're treats. They're not feed substitutes. And I would even consider scratch feed a treat product, okay? Even though it's called feed, it's really a treat product. It's not formulated to produce eggs, which is what we're doing, or to produce meat in a meat bird. So treats are fine, and being able to supplement that, and it also prevents, if you're not open range and free range with these layers, it prevents boredom and other things to have treats out there.
So how much should I expect my full-grown birds, my mature birds, to eat per day?
Okay, so on a layer feed product, that's going to be about 1/4 pound per day per bird. So you can roughly figure that, and you'll know what you need to purchase for the number of birds that you have. And smaller birds obviously will eat less, but somewhere around that 1/4 pound range.
And what about water? How much water should I be giving them?
Well, that's a good question, because they're going to consume at different rates depending on the different time of year. But the key to water is have it available 24/7, and make sure it's clean, make sure it's fresh. And that's really important, because unfortunately chickens are not the cleanest of all animals, so they're going to get that water dirty. They're going to get in there, and they're going to scratch stuff over in it and all that kind of thing. You can hang it off the ground, and that helps a lot in keeping it clean and fresh. So
perfect. Do you have any other things you want to share with our viewers today?
I would just say a couple of things about energy requirements in feed, and make sure that you don't find an energy requirement on a feed tag, but it's very important. So we want to make sure that, if we're having some issues with not getting eggs on a regular basis, thin-shelled eggs, some things like that, that we want to make sure that our energy formulation in those feedstuffs are at the level that they need to be.
Thanks, John. Thank you all for joining us today. Visit your local co-op for more knowledge, tips, and tricks, and also to pick up the items you need for your chick project.